All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children. Men will die for their wives and children. And God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendis est. The Feminist Question. Restoring Link Between Authority and Responsibility, written by Conrad Riker. Available now, links in description. Toxic Feminism Critique. Why the obvious became forbidden and what comes next. I once watched a newsroom strangle a crime story because the word violence made the copy desk flinch. 15% spike in assaults, women bleeding, men robbed, children kept indoors, and the editor-in-chief, Dr. Elara Winona, killed the numbers. Not because they were false, because they were, in her phrase, unexplicit. By this, she meant the data was technically true, but spiritually insensitive to the systemic winds she believed actually pushed the knives. She swapped crime surge for community safety crisis, stripped the statistics, and auto-flagged any reporter who objected as a tone police suspect. The algorithm she installed, an empathy lexicon, now filters every sentence through a mood ring before it reaches the public. The citizens of that district go to bed thinking their neighborhood is merely navigating challenges. They wake up to broken glass and ambulances. The compassion is the camouflage. Dr. Winona genuinely believes she is protecting the vulnerable reader from re-traumatization, shielding the marginalized community from stigmatizing data, and elevating journalism from crude number crunching to sacred contextual listening. In the staff meetings, there are tears, affirmations, a palpable warmth, the unmistakable sensation of people performing goodness together. If you walked in cold, you would think, these are kind people. And you would be half right. They are kind in the way a mother who never tells her son he is failing is kind, tenderly, and catastrophically. But psychoanalysis reaches beneath the warmth and finds the machinery. The unexplicit clause is a classic defense mechanism scaled up to institutional architecture. Denial dressed as nuance, projection costumed as empathy. What is actually being protected is not the traumatized reader. What is being protected is Dr. Winona's self-image and the staff's shared identity as good people who would never let ugly facts into the room. The crime data implicates policies they championed, programs they praised, ideologies they swore by. The 15% surge is not merely a number, it is an accusation. And so the ego, unable to tolerate the accusation, recodes the accusation itself as harm. The fact becomes the wound. The messenger becomes the assailant. This is not compassion. It is the narcissism of a conscience that cannot survive contact with its own fruit. And logic finishes the autopsy with a single incision. How can you empower the vulnerable by denying them the very information they need to survive? The woman in that district who will not go out after dark because she does not know the risk does not need a curated emotional safety net. She needs the number. The father deciding whether to let his son walk to school needs the map. By stripping explicit data in the name of care, Dr. Winona has made the vulnerable more vulnerable, the ignorant more ignorant, and the powerful herself, her algorithm, her institution, more powerful. She has built the exact structure every tyrant builds, a monopoly on interpretation, enforced by mood, sealed against falsification. The unexplicit truth cannot be tested because it was never defined. It cannot be wrong because it was never stated. It is a fortress of fog, and the people inside it feel safe precisely because they can no longer see the cliff. Here is the inversion laid bare. What they call safety is control. What they call compassion is contempt. The quiet, devastating contempt of people who have decided that the truth is too dangerous for ordinary minds to handle, and that they, the sensitive class, must mediate reality on everyone's behalf. The father's law, here are the facts, here is the danger, here is what we must do, is replaced by the mother's mood. Shh, don't upset yourself, let us hold the difficult feelings for you. But they are not holding your feelings, they are hoarding your information. And a civilization that lets its institutions replace the explicit truth with an administered emotional climate is not evolving toward justice. It is regressing into infancy. Guided by compass it has decided is too triggering to read. Scenario: the sanctuary newsroom of the Metro Daily, led by Editor-in-Chief Dr. Alara Winona, implements a new safety-first editorial protocol. When a fact-checked report reveals a 15% spike in violent crime in a low-income district, the copy desk flags it as potentially triggering due to the word violence. Dr. Winona invokes the unexplicit clause. The data is technically true, but unexplicit about the systemic power dynamics causing it. She orders the headline changed from crime surge to community safety crisis, removing the specific stats which are deemed oppressive metrics. Dissenting male reporters who cite the raw numbers are accused of tone policing and weaponizing data to silence the victim's narrative. The newsroom's algorithm now auto-censors any word not on the empathy lexicon, effectively replacing truth with a curated emotional safety net. The public receives a sanitized version of reality that feels safe but is epistemically hollow. While the newsroom's internal metrics show a 40% increase in participation points for those who accept the unexplicit narrative without question. Scenario title: The Unexplicit Safety Net. Core contradiction. The ideology claims to protect the vulnerable by hiding the truth, yet it disempowers the vulnerable by denying them the explicit data needed to understand and combat the danger. It demands transparency in motive, but opacity in fact. Satanic inversion. The rainbow covenant of order, mercy is inverted into the safety bubble, covenant of appetite exemption. Truth, which is meant to be a ladder out of chaos, is recoded as a wall that excludes the sensitive. The unexplicit becomes the new logos. What is felt is truer than what is seen. The father's law, explicit standard, is replaced by the mother's mood, unexplicit comfort. Matrix of sins. Pride. The refusal to accept that reality is independent of our feelings. The editor believes her emotional framework is superior to the objective data. Envy. Resentment of the hard masculine standard of truth, which is rigid and unyielding, replaced by the soft feminine standard of context, which is fluid and forgiving. Wrath. The aggressive censorship of dissenting voices, framed as safe space protection, is actually a punitive strike against those who impose the burden of explicitness. Sloth. The intellectual laziness of accepting unexplicit nuance as a substitute for rigorous fact-checking. Why climb the ladder of data when you can float in the sea of feeling? Lust. The appetite for comfort and validation over the discipline of truth. The newsroom becomes a pleasure palace of affirmation. Avarice. The hoarding of institutional power by the sensitive class who claim moral authority without the responsibility of factual accuracy. Vainglory. The performance of safety as a status symbol, being triggered, becomes a badge of honor, a competitive victimhood. Despair. The underlying belief that the world is too dangerous to be faced with its naked, unexplicit truth, a retreat into a curated fantasy. Scenario map. The unexplicit safety net. Scenario map. Scenario summary. The Metro Daily newsroom, under Editor-in-Chief Dr. Alara Winona, implements a safety-first editorial protocol. A fact-checked report showing a 15% spike in violent crime in a low-income district is flagged as potentially triggering. Dr. Winona invokes the unexplicit clause. The data is technically true, but unexplicit about systemic power dynamics. The headline is changed from crime surge to community safety crisis, and specific stats are removed as oppressive metrics. Dissenting male reporters are accused of tone policing and weaponizing data. An algorithm autocensors words not on the empathy lexicon. The public receives a sanitized, epistemically hollow version of reality, while internal metrics show a 40% increase in participation points for those who accept the unexplicit narrative. Ideology being acted out. The ideology is a fusion of repressive tolerance, epistemic injustice theory, and intersectional standpoint epistemology. It holds that explicit truth is a tool of patriarchal domination, and that unexplicit intuitive knowledge, rooted in felt experience and group identity, is a higher, more just form of knowing. The institution's purpose shifts from informing the public to managing emotional states, with safety as the supreme value against which all speech is measured. Core contradiction. The ideology claims to protect the vulnerable by hiding the truth, yet it disempowers the vulnerable by denying them the explicit data needed to understand and combat the danger. It demands transparency in motive, but opacity in fact. The very people it claims to serve are left blind to the actual threats they face. Sin matrix. Pride chief. The refusal to accept that reality is independent of our feelings. Dr. Winona believes her emotional framework is superior to objective data. In the resentment of the hard masculine standard of truth, replaced by a soft feminine standard of context. Wrath, aggressive censorship of dissenting voices framed as protection but functioning as punishment. Sloth, intellectual laziness of accepting unexplicit nuance as a substitute for rigorous fact-checking. Lust, appetite for comfort and validation over the discipline of truth. Avarice, hoarding of institutional power by the sensitive class. Vainglory, performance of safety as a status symbol. Despair, belief that the world is too dangerous to be faced with naked truth. Genesis covenant symbol inversion. The rainbow, God's covenant of mercy and order after the flood, is inverted into the safety bubble, a covenant of appetite and exemption. The rainbow's promise that the world will endure despite its chaos is replaced by a promise that the institution will shield its members from all discomfort. The covenant shifts from I will not destroy the world to I will not let you feel the world. Satanic inversion. Truth, meant to be a ladder out of chaos, is recoded as a wall that excludes the sensitive. The unexplicit becomes the new logos. What is felt is truer than what is seen. The father's law, explicit standard, measurable reality, is replaced by the mother's mood, unexplicit comfort, curated feeling. The inversion is complete. Ignorance becomes safety, and clarity becomes cruelty.
Dr. Winona's position. Dr. Winona argues that explicit is a tool of patriarchal domination, a rigid grid that flattens complex, lived experience. She posits that unexplicit is the higher form of knowing, an intuitive, empathetic grasp of the vibe of truth. To demand explicit data is to demand a man's view of the world, cold, dead, hierarchical. To accept the unexplicit is to embrace the feminine principle of flow, context, and care. She claims the safety newsroom is not censoring truth, but elevating it from the crude to the sacred.
Psychoanalytic and trait model axes. The unexplicit epistemic gap, Jungian. The collective unconscious of the institution derives meaning from archetypal feelings rather than conscious logos. The rejection of raw data in favor of vibe and context mistakes the shadow for the substance. The counter-logos, truth is explicit, ambiguity is a refuge for the unprepared. Safety as power adlerian. The will to power disguised as the desire for protection. Dr. Winona uses safety to silence dissent, positioning herself as the arbiter of what is safe. The counter-logos, power is the ability to endure reality. Safety is the excuse to avoid it. The tone policing trap, Freudian. Reaction formation, where the aggression of censorship is experienced as gentleness. The aggressive removal of headlines is framed as gentle curation. The counter logos, care does not hide the world, it prepares you for it. Status anxiety of the sensitive, attachment. Anxious attachment to the institutional parent validates fragility as virtue. Reporters compete to show who is most affected, gaining status through vulnerability. The counterlogos, maturity, is the ability to stand alone in the storm. Hostile attribution of competence, attribution. The male reporter's accurate data is seen as cold and oppressive. The editor's vague narrative is nuanced and just. The counterlogos, precision is not cruelty, it is clarity. The narcissism of small difference is big five. High neuroticism and low conscientiousness. Emotional reactivity is valued over factual consistency. The counterlogos, resilience is the virtue of the strong, fragility is the excuse of the weak. The moralization of data, moral psychology. The binding of care harm excludes fairness, cheating, and authority respect. Data is discarded if it hurts feelings, even if true. The counterlogos, truth is the highest good. Feeling is the weather. The fallacy of the unfalsifiable vibe, fallacy. A claim that cannot be tested because it relies on subjective experience. Dr. Wynona's unexplicit truth cannot be wrong because it is not defined. The counterlogos, if it cannot be stated, it cannot be known.
Dr. Wynona's demonstration.
The ethics of the implicit, why safety must precede truth. A position paper on the Sanctuary Newsroom Protocol.
By Dr. Ilara Wynona, Editor-in-Chief, Metro Daily. There is a violence older than fists, older than statutes, older than courts. It is the violence of the datum, the cold number. The brute statistic, flung like a stone across the polished conference table of our newsroom by some red-faced reporter who believes, with the touching sincerity of a child who has never learned to share, that a spreadsheet constitutes a window onto reality. I am here to tell you it does not. It constitutes a weapon. And we, those of us entrusted with the sacred work of narrating a wounded world, have an obligation higher than the repetition of measurements. We have an obligation to care.
The tyranny of the explicit. Let us begin with a word, explicit, from the Latin explicitus, meaning unfolded, unrolled, displayed. Consider the image, a Roman magistrate unrolling a scroll before a crowd, declaring these are the facts. The posture is necessarily hierarchical. Someone holds the scroll, someone else receives it. The scroll holder is sovereign. The crowd is subjected. To be explicit is to perform authority. This is not a controversial observation. It is, rather, the foundational insight of several decades of rigorous epistemological work. From Marcuse's luminous demonstration that tolerance can itself be repressive, to Riker's excavation of the testimonial injustices embedded in who gets to count as a knower, to Butler's dismantling of the fiction that gender, or anything meaningful about human experience, can be stated rather than performed and felt. What these thinkers share, and what the pale, sweating reporter who waves his crime statistics at me like a crucifix at a vampire will never understand, is that explicitness is never neutral. It is always already an exercise of power. The demand to show the numbers is the demand to occupy the magistrate's chair. It is, in its very grammar, a patriarchal demand, a masculine demand. The demand of those who have been trained to believe that truth arrives horizontally, in a line like a sentence diagrammed in a schoolroom run by men who thought diagrams were the same as understanding. I reject this, not because I fear data, because I have transcended it, toward a higher epistemology. What our Safety First protocol inaugurates is not censorship, it is ascension. We are not removing truth, we are elevating it from the crude and visible to the sacred and felt. Consider the scenario that occasioned this essay. Our Metro Daily reporters, equipped with police records and municipal databases, discovered a 15% increase in violent crime in the Lowell district. They returned to the newsroom vibrating with the pathetic excitement of men who have found a bone. They wanted to publish the number, to display it, to unfold it, expliciter, before a public they imagined as a congregation awaiting the sermon of their competence. I asked a simple question. Safe for whom? Not safe for the Lowell community, whose already besieged sense of collective dignity would be further eroded by the publication of a number that, while technically accurate, is contextually violent. Not safe for our readers of color, who daily endure the microaggressive implication that their neighborhoods are inherently dangerous. Not safe for the children who might see the headline on a newsstand and internalize a geography of fear that will shape their psychic landscape for decades. The number is true. I concede this. The number is also a trauma, and trauma, as any ethicist worth her training manual will tell you, outranks trivia. We revised the headline, Community Safety Crisis instead of Crime Surge. We removed the specific statistics, which our empathy lexicon rightly flags as oppressive metrics, numbers used consciously or not, to reinforce the carceral logic that treats marginalized bodies as naturally criminogenic. And our newsroom flourished. Participation points rose 40%. Reporters who had never before spoken in editorial meetings began to share. The air itself seemed lighter, as though the building had exhaled a sigh it had been holding since 1953. The atmospheric truth, what the dissenters, almost exclusively male, I note without surprise, fail to grasp is that there exists a form of knowing above the explicit. Let us call it the unexplicit, not the unspoken, which implies repression. Not the implicit, which implies something merely waiting to be stated. The unexplicit, that which exceeds statement, which lives in the vibration between facts, in the felt texture of a community's experience, in the vibe of truth that no spreadsheet has ever captured, because spreadsheets are instruments of a worldview that believes reality is a row of boxes. The unexplicit is not a lesser form of knowledge, grudgingly accepted because we lack better data. It is a higher form. It is what the mystics knew and the empiricists murdered. It is what a mother intuits about her child's suffering that no pediatric scale can measure. It is what a community knows about itself that no outside analyst can code. When our reporters demand the right to publish raw numbers, they are not defending truth. They are defending their truth, their monopoly on the scroll, their right to stand at the front of the room and unroll it. They are defending the patriarchal epistemology that equates visibility with validity, that worships the displayed and despises the felt, that treats the imposition of a number onto a community as neutral rather than what it is, an act of epistemic colonization. On weaponizing data, one of our reporters, you may guess the demographic, accused me of replacing journalism with therapy. I received this as a compliment, though it was not intended as one. Therapy at its best is the practice of holding space for a person's pain so that they may heal. Journalism at its best should be the same practice at scale. To report on a community is to enter its nervous system. If you enter with a scalpel and a chart, you will cause inflammation. If you enter with presence, with context, with what I call ambient attunement, the deliberate cultivation of an emotional field in which truth can be metabolized without re-traumatizing the subject, you may actually help. The old journalism, the journalism of facts, was never neutral. It was the house organ of a civilization that valued production over people, data over dignity, the said over the felt. It was the journalism of the boardroom and the battlefield, written by and for those who believed that the world was a machine and their job was to report on its workings. That world is dying good. We are midwives to what comes next. The sacred work of curation. Our algorithm, calibrated against the empathy lexicon, does not censor. It curates. It distinguishes between language that illuminates and language that inflames. The word violence, for instance, carries a somatic charge that triggers limbic responses in readers with trauma histories. Readers we are ethically obligated to protect. Replacing it with safety crisis is not euphemism. It is trauma-informed semantic practice. It says the same thing, there is a problem requiring attention, without reproducing the neurological harm that the prior language would inflict on the very population we seek to serve. If this strikes you as Orwellian, I invite you to consider which is more Orwellian, a newsroom that gently curates its language to protect the vulnerable, or a newsroom that broadcasts harmful data with the alibi of the public's right to know. Who's public? Who's right? The public is not a monolith. It is a body with scar tissue, and some areas cannot bear the touch of a raw statistic without tearing further. The higher compassion, I am frequently told, usually by men whose emotional range runs the gamut from smug to belligerent, that I am treating the public like children, that I am replacing the hard bread of truth with the cotton candy of comfort. When a person is drowning, you do not hand her a pie chart on the specific gravity of water. You extend a hand, you hold her, you create around her thrashing body a zone of buoyancy. Only when she can breathe do you begin gently to describe the current that nearly took her. Our readers are drowning. The Lowell District is drowning. The number 15% is not a life preserver. It is an anchor dressed as one. What we offer instead: context, care, the prioritization of felt safety over raw display. This is the life preserver. This is the hand. And the hand that holds it is not weak. It is the strongest hand there is. The hand that refuses to let the data do the talking because it knows that data uncontextualized by love is just another word for indifference. In closing, the Sanctuary Newsroom is not an abdication from truth. It is truth's highest expression, the truth that how we say something is inseparable from what we say, that safety is not the enemy of knowledge, but its precondition, that a statistic is not a sacrament and a reporter is not a priest, that the highest calling of an institution of public communication is not to display reality, but to cradle it. I did not become an editor to unroll scrolls before a crowd. I became an editor to build a sanctuary. And in that sanctuary, the unexplicit reigns, not as an absence, but as a presence deeper than the explicit can reach. The reporters who chafe under this protocol are not my enemies. They are my patients. Men raised to worship the datum, trained to kneel before the chart, catechized in a faith that equates feeling with weakness and measurement with meaning. They will heal, or they will find other newsrooms. Either way, the future is unexplicit and it is safe. And it is already here. Psychoanalytic debunk. The unexplicit lie, how safety became the new censorship. The scenario, the Metro Daily newsroom under the command of one Dr. Ilara Winona, has ceased to be a house of record and become a hospice for feelings. A fact-checked report documenting a 15% spike in violent crime in a low-income district is flagged as potentially triggering. The numbers are real, the source is verified, the public interest is obvious. But Dr. Winona invokes the unexplicit clause. The data is technically true but insufficiently attentive to systemic power dynamics. The headline is changed from crime surge to community safety crisis. The statistics are removed as oppressive metrics. Male reporters who object are accused of tone policing and weaponizing data. An algorithm now auto-censors any word missing from the empathy lexicon. The public receives a sanitized fog. Internal metrics show a 40% rise in participation points for those who parrot the unexplicit line. The institution has inverted its purpose. It no longer informs, it soothes. It no longer reports, it manages emotional states. Truth is not the goal, safety is the god. The compassion mask. Dr. Winona's argument is a masterpiece of reaction formation. She claims to protect the vulnerable by hiding the truth, yet she disempowers the very people she purports to serve. The residents of the Lowell District, the ones actually facing the 15% crime spike, are left blind to the threat. They cannot organize, cannot demand accountability, cannot arm themselves with knowledge, because the editor has decided they are too fragile to handle a number. This is not compassion. This is contempt dressed in a turtleneck. It assumes the public is a child, the marginalized are permanent patients, and the truth is a poison to be administered only by a credentialed priesthood of feeling. Dr. Winona's care is the care of the zookeeper who keeps the animals tranquilized so they don't notice the cage. She does not elevate the weak. She guarantees their weakness by denying them the explicit data required to navigate reality. The core contradiction is naked. The ideology demands transparency in motive, but opacity in fact. It screams for justice while hiding the evidence of crime. It claims to love the oppressed while ensuring they remain ignorant of the oppressor's movements. The unconscious payoff. What does Dr. Winona really get from this protocol? Not truth, not safety for the public. She gets power, she gets the thrill of being the arbiter of reality. She gets the status of the sensitive sage who sees beyond crude numbers into the sacred vibe. She gets institutional control, the ability to punish dissenters, reward sycophants, and position herself as the moral center of the newsroom. The unconscious payoff is the pleasure of sovereignty without responsibility. By making truth unexplicit, she makes herself unfalsifiable. She cannot be wrong because her claims cannot be tested. She has built a fortress of ambiguity where no arrow of fact can penetrate. This is not wisdom, it is cowardice armored as enlightenment. The male reporters who cite raw numbers are not her enemies, they are her scapegoats. By accusing them of coldness, she projects her own coldness, her willingness to abandon the truth for comfort onto them. She performs empathy while practicing censorship. She preaches care while wielding the whip. The psychoanalytic axis. The unexplicit epistemic gap Jungian. The institution has abandoned the conscious logos of explicit truth for the archetypal shadows of collective feeling. Data is rejected not because it is false, but because it feels cold. The vibe becomes the new criterion of validity. This is the collective unconscious swallowing the conscious mind. The shadow is mistaken for the substance. The result is a newsroom that cannot distinguish between a fact and a mood. Safety is power, Adlerian. Dr. Winona's will to power is disguised as the desire to protect. She uses safety to silence dissent, positioning herself as the gatekeeper of permissible experience. The weak claim authority by defining the terms of danger. She is not protecting the public, she is controlling it. Safety is the currency of the weak, used to buy the obedience of the strong. The tone policing trap Freudian. This is textbook reaction formation. The aggression of censorship is experienced as gentleness. The violent removal of headlines is framed as gentle curation. Dr. Winona's hand covers the public's eyes and calls it love, but it is control. The mother who refuses to let the child see the world does not prepare the child for life. She ensures the child remains dependent on her. Status anxiety of the sensitive attachment. The newsroom has become an anxious attachment system. Reporters compete to show who is most affected by the unexplicit narrative, gaining status through vulnerability. The institution rewards the cry, not the solution. Maturity, the ability to stand alone in the storm, is punished. Fragility is crowned. The trait and attribution map. Hostile attribution of competence. Attribution. The male reporter's accurate data is seen as cold and oppressive. Dr. Winona's vague narrative is nuanced and just. This is the fundamental attribution error weaponized. The competent are accused of cruelty. The incompetent are praised for sensitivity. Precision is not cruelty, it is clarity, but clarity threatens those who rule by fog. The narcissism of small differences, Big Five. The newsroom operates on high neuroticism and low conscientiousness. Emotional reactivity is valued over factual consistency. The sensitive soul mistakes its own fragility for the world's complexity. It is not the world that is dangerous. It is the lack of resilience. Resilience is the virtue of the strong. Fragility is the excuse of the weak. The moralization of data, moral psychology, the moral foundation of care, harm, has been elevated to the exclusion of fairness, cheating, and authority respect. Data is discarded if it hurts feelings, even if it is true. The hierarchy is inverted. Feeling becomes the highest good. Truth becomes a secondary concern. This is the inversion of the cosmic order. Truth is the highest good. Feeling is the weather. The fallacy stack. Dr. Winona's argument is not an argument, it is a fallacy buffet. Equivocation, safety, is conflated with emotional comfort. Real safety, the kind that requires knowledge of actual threats, is abandoned for the safety of ignorance. Appeal to emotion. The vibe of truth is presented as superior to data. Feelings replace facts as the currency of proof. Argument from intuition. The unexplicit is claimed to be a higher form of knowing. It is not. It is a refuge for the unprepared. Moving the goalposts. Data is oppressive until it fits the narrative. When the numbers are inconvenient, the standard changes. False dilemma. Explicit truth is framed as male, cold, and oppressive. Implicit feeling is female, warm, and just. This is a cartoon. Appeal to pity. The sensitive reader needs protection from the truth. This infantilizes the public and justifies censorship. Hasty generalization. One bad use of data is taken to invalidate all data. Moral relativism. Truth is made relative to the viewer's feelings. The result is epistemic chaos. Circular reasoning. The protocol is safe because we say it is safe. The definition is self-sealing. Red herring, tone policing is used to distract from the content of the dissent. Straw man, the male reporter is caricatured as cold and cruel to avoid engaging his facts. Begging the question, the unexplicit is true because it feels true. The premise contains the conclusion. The satanic inversion, the rainbow is God's covenant after the flood, a promise of order, mercy, and the endurance of the world despite its chaos. Dr. Winona has inverted this covenant. Her safety bubble is a covenant of appetite and exemption. The rainbow's promise, I will not destroy the world, is replaced by I will not let you feel the world. Truth, which is meant to be a ladder out of chaos, is recoded as a wall that excludes the sensitive. The unexplicit becomes the new logos. What is felt is truer than what is seen. The father's law, explicit standard, measurable reality, is replaced by the mother's mood, unexplicit comfort, curated feeling. The inversion is total. Ignorance becomes safety. Clarity becomes cruelty. The covenant shifts from I will spare you judgment to I will spare you reality. This is not mercy. It is the abandonment of the adult duty to face the world as it is. It is the retreat into a pre-linguistic, pre-moral womb of feeling, where no demand is made and no truth is required. The matrix of sins. Pride, chief sin. Dr. Winona refuses to accept that reality is independent of her feelings. She believes her emotional framework is superior to objective data. She has made herself the measure of all things. This is the original sin, the refusal to receive the created order as a gift and a limit. Envy. She resents the hard masculine standard of truth, rigid, unyielding, explicit, and replaces it with a soft, feminine standard of context, fluid, forgiving, unaccountable. She envies the clarity she cannot produce, so she destroys it. Wrath, the censorship of dissenting voices, is aggressive, punitive, and total. It is framed as protection, but it functions as a strike against those who impose the burden of explicitness. The wrath is real, the compassion is the mask. Sloth, accepting unexplicit nuance as a substitute for rigorous fact-checking, is intellectual laziness. Why climb the ladder of data when you can float in the sea of feeling? The protocol is a hammock, not a discipline. Lust, the appetite for comfort and validation over the discipline of truth. The newsroom becomes a pleasure palace of affirmation. The truth is sacrificed on the altar of good feelings. Avarice, the hoarding of institutional power by the sensitive class. Dr. Winona claims moral authority without the responsibility of factual accuracy. She has captured the means of communication and uses it to enrich her own status. Vainglory, the performance of safety as a status symbol. Being triggered becomes a badge of honor. Participation points replace truth as the currency of worth. The newsroom is a theater of competitive victimhood. Despair, the underlying belief that the world is too dangerous to be faced with its naked truth. This is acedia, the refusal to engage the difficult task of living in reality. Dr. Winona has given up on the world and retreated into a curated fantasy. She calls it safety. It is surrender. The androcentric counter-logos. The masculine principle. The logos is the principle of order, boundary, name, and law. It is the ability to say, this is true and this is false, to measure, to judge, to build, to protect. Dr. Winona has not transcended this principle. She has betrayed it. She has traded the hard work of truth for the soft tyranny of feeling. The counter-logos is simple. Truth is explicit. Ambiguity is not depth. It is a refuge for the unprepared. Care does not hide the world. It prepares you for it. The mother who covers the child's eyes does not teach courage. She teaches fear. Power is the ability to endure reality. Safety is the excuse to avoid it. The man who faces the storm is stronger than the man who hides in the basement and calls it sanctuary. Precision is not cruelty, it is clarity. The male reporter who cites the numbers is not cold. He is honest. He is doing the work that the editor has abandoned. Resilience is the virtue of the strong. Fragility is the excuse of the weak. A civilization that coddles fragility will not survive. If it cannot be stated, it cannot be known. The unexplicit is not a higher epistemology, it is a lower one. It is the epistemology of the infant, who knows only the mother's mood and the breast's warmth. It is the epistemology of the slave, who must guess the master's will because the law is unwritten. Standards are ladders. Resentment calls them walls. Dr. Winona has called the ladder a wall and told the public to stay on the ground. She has lowered the measure and called it justice. But lowering the measure does not lift the person. It only ensures that no one climbs. Compassion without correction is disguised contempt. Dr. Winona does not believe the public can handle the truth. She does not believe the Lowell District can handle a number. She has written them off as permanent patients, eternal children, incapable of bearing the weight of reality. That is not love. That is the deepest contempt. Excellence is not cruelty. Excellence is love with a spine. The truth is a gift. The explicit fact is a ladder. The standard is a mercy. Dr. Winona has refused all three. She has built a sanctuary of lies and called it safety. She has crowned ignorance and called it wisdom. She has abandoned the adult duty to face the world and called it compassion. The future is not unexplicit. The future is explicit, measurable, accountable, and true. The future belongs to those who can name the demons, face the data, and build the ladders. Dr. Winona's sanctuary is a tomb. The rest of us have work to do. Axis ledger, the unexplicit lie. 1. The unexplicit epistemic gap. Symptom: rejecting explicit data, crime stats, test scores in favor of wide context or lived experience as the primary source of truth. Hidden payoff: the speaker gains unaccountable authority. Her feelings cannot be disproven by facts. She rules the interpretation, not the evidence. Fallacy: argument from intuition. What feels true is truer than what is measured. Counterlogos: truth is explicit by nature. Ambiguity is the refuge of the unprepared. A fact that cannot be stated is a feeling, not knowledge. Puncturing question: if the data is oppressive, what specific numbers would you accept to prove you are wrong? 2. Safety as power. Symptom: using safety and triggering to silence dissent, censor facts, and control speech under the guise of protection. Hidden payoff: the censor claims moral superiority while exercising absolute control. Safety becomes a weapon to disarm the strong and empower the weak. Fallacy: appeal to emotion. The demand for safety trumps all other considerations, including truth. Counterlogos: power is the ability to endure reality. Safety is the excuse to avoid it. Real protection prepares for the storm. Fake protection hides the weather report. Puncturing question: are you protecting me from harm or from the knowledge I need to protect myself? 3. The tone policing trap. Symptom: attacking the speaker's tone, angry, cold, aggressive, to dismiss the content of his argument, especially when he cites uncomfortable facts. Hidden payoff: the accuser reframes her own aggression, censorship, dismissal, as gentleness and care, while framing his directness as violence. Fallacy: equivocation, conflating emotional discomfort with actual harm, conflating tone with truth. Counterlogos: care does not hide the world, it prepares you for it. A surgeon who tells you the truth is kinder than a mother who lies about the wound. Puncturing question: if I change my tone to a whisper, would the facts you are ignoring suddenly become acceptable? 4. Status anxiety of the sensitive. Symptom: performing fragility as a badge of honor, competitive victimhood where being triggered grants moral status and veto power over speech. Hidden payoff: the sensitive person gains a permanent excuse to avoid challenge, criticism, and accountability. Fragility becomes a throne. Fallacy: hasty generalization. One's own emotional fragility is mistaken for the world's objective danger. Counterlogos: resilience is the virtue of the strong. Fragility is the excuse of the weak. The world does not owe you a trigger warning, it owes you a challenge. Puncturing question: if your feelings are the highest authority, how do you know you are not just wrong and comfortable? 5. The moralization of data. Symptom: rejecting data not because it is false, but because it hurts feelings or harms the narrative, thereby making truth subordinate to emotional comfort. Hidden payoff: the ideologue can dismiss any inconvenient fact by labeling it harmful, preserving the preferred story without ever having to defend it logically. Fallacy. Moral relativism. Truth is relative to the viewer's feelings. The care foundation overrides the fairness foundation. Counter logos. Truth is the highest good. Feeling is the weather. A fact does not become a lie because it offends your sensibilities. Puncturing question. What is more important, that the data is accurate or that it makes you feel safe? 6. The fallacy of the unfalsifiable vibe. Symptom. Making claims that cannot be tested, disproven, or even clearly defined. The vibe of truth. Systemic energy. Unexplicit context. Hidden payoff. The speaker builds a fortress of ambiguity where no arrow of fact can penetrate. She can never be wrong because she was never specific. Fallacy. Moving the goalposts. The definition of truth shifts to avoid any evidence that contradicts the preferred feeling. Counter logos. If it cannot be stated, it cannot be known. If it cannot be falsified, it cannot be true. It is only a preference dressed as wisdom. Puncturing question. What specific evidence would convince you that your vibe is wrong? Schema, axis. The unexplicit epistemic gap, Jungian. Signal. The rejection of raw data in favor of vibe and context as the primary source of truth. Counter logos. Truth is explicit. Ambiguity is a refuge for the unprepared. Safety as power, Adlerian signal. Dr. Winona uses safety to silence dissent, positioning herself as the arbiter of what is safe for the public. Counter logos. Power is the ability to endure reality. Safety is the excuse to avoid it. The tone policing trap. Freudian signal. The aggressive removal of headlines is framed as gentle curation of the public's emotional state. Counter logos. Care does not hide the world. It prepares you for it. Status anxiety of the sensitive. Attachment. Signal. Reporters compete to show who is most affected by the unexplicit, gaining status through vulnerability. Counter logos. Maturity is the ability to stand alone in the storm. Hostile attribution of competence. Attribution. Signal. The male reporter's accurate data is seen as cold and oppressive. The editor's vague narrative is nuanced and just. Counter logos. Precision is not cruelty, it is clarity. The narcissism of small differences. Big Five. Signal. The newsroom prioritizes emotional comfort, high neuroticism over factual accuracy, low conscientiousness. Counter logos. Resilience is the virtue of the strong, fragility is the excuse of the weak. The moralization of data. Moral psychology signal. The data is unfair because it hurts feelings, so it is discarded even if it is true. Counter logos. Truth is the highest good, feeling is the weather. The fallacy of the unfalsifiable vibe. Fallacy. Signal. Dr. Winona's unexplicit truth cannot be wrong because it is not defined. Counter logos. If it cannot be stated, it cannot be known. I have spent this book unearthing the grammar of deception, tracing the etymology of every sentimental trap, and naming the demons that possess the modern mind. You have seen how compassion is weaponized, how safety becomes a cage, and how the softest words cloak the hardest tyrannies. So let me leave you with one rule, hard and bright as a blade, to cut through every plea for ideological mercy. Always ask three things of any compassion claim. What does the claimant gain? What are they projecting onto you? And what does reality actually show? First, incentives. No one speaks from a vacuum. Every claim of compassion serves an interest, whether it is power, status, money, or relief from accountability. The feminist academic who demands equity grading gains jurisdiction over grade books and a sense of moral superiority. The therapist who validates every grievance gains a paying client. The news editor who censors data gains a docile audience. If you do not ask who benefits, you become the instrument of another's ambition. Second, projections. The ideologue accuses you of what they themselves practice. They call you oppressive while silencing dissent. They claim to protect the vulnerable while denying them truth. They preach empathy while canceling opponents. This is the satanic inversion. The sin they name in you is the sin they embody. Recognize the mirror, and you will not be fooled by the mask. Third, reality testing. Does the claim conform to the world as it is? Does equity grading improve competence, or does it produce illiterate graduates? Does the safety protocol reduce crime, or does it hide data and lull the public into danger? Does the compassion for the addict enable recovery, or does it subsidize self-destruction? Reality is the only tribunal that does not lie. Any ideology that cannot survive contact with the real is a doctrine of death. Hold these three questions like a trivium of discernment. Incentives reveal the hidden ledger. Projections expose the secret heart. Reality test cuts through the fog. With this rule, you can analyze any compassion claim from the pulpit, the lecture hall, the newsroom, the courthouse, and see whether it is a ladder to truth or a wall against it. And when you see the wall, name it. Dismantle it. Restore the order of truth, beauty, and goodness under the fatherhood of God. That is your duty. That is your liberation. Sponsored book. The Feminist Question, Restoring Link Between Authority and Responsibility. My life changed when I saw my nephew expelled for defending himself against a girl's attack. The school called him toxic, while she faced zero consequences. That moment crystallized the rot. A society where male authority dissolves while female irresponsibility reigns. I spent years researching this collapse, tracking how feminist dogma hijacked institutions by weaponizing victimhood and dismantling accountability. This book exposes that machinery piece by piece. If you're exhausted by men being vilified as oppressors while chaos escalates, unkilled crime, crumbling families, biological truths denied, you've found your handbook. We dissect the left's word traps in word games that broke civilization, reveal psychiatry's surrender to ideology in Diagnostic Manual of Woke Pathology, and dismantle equity's tyranny in Equity's bloody footprint. You'll get actionable tools: how to spot maternalist manipulation tactics, counter emotional shakedowns, and rebuild authority structures gutted by decades of sabotage. This isn't theory, it's a battle plan forged in data, history, and clinical studies proving the mental health crisis fueling this madness. To the red-pilled truth seeker, you hunger for logic amid the lies. You recognize Western greatness, rooted in Greek reason, Christian ethics, and Enlightenment rigor, is being erased. Here, you'll arm yourself with unassailable arguments against abortion's civilizational toll, the gossip industrial complex, and narcissism's cultural metastasis. We cite evolutionary biologists, cognitive scientists, and historians to eviscerate Marxist lies. If you value the trivium and transcendentals, this is your intellectual fortress. Everyone else, put this down now. If phrases like toxic masculinity or systemic oppression comfort you, if you believe feelings override facts, this book will feel like hate speech. Truth demands courage you lack. Go knit, binge Netflix, or attend a privilege awareness seminar. What follows is for warriors rebuilding civilization, not bystanders content with its funeral. The Feminist Question, Restoring Link Between Authority and Responsibility. Written by Conrad Riker. Buy now, links in description.